friends, they used to laugh at me. Used to show them on my record something casually. Used to say it was a passion, I'm a path to be. Then they told me that I couldn't, so I had to be. Tell me what they really think about it now. Used to hate it, but I guarantee they're proud. Had to do it just to show them that I could, yeah. Now I finally think I took it where I should, yeah. Had a jokes on you and now you're on and laughing. I did a whole lot of winning. Look, it came from a passion. I see a whole lot of knowings I could see out in public, and they may think a lot of things, man. At least think something, now you the judge. Hey, now tell me where you ended up. Yeah. Look, I bet it was a simple job. Yeah. Look, I went and took a different route. Yeah. Look, that's why my life is different now. Back in my feelings, look, when I wasn't so gifted and I was learning to do this, and all I heard were the critics, and now I'm playing for that shit. Look, I was way out the basis, but I just needed some talent so I could wait this to greatness. Oh yeah, you ain't never think this, no, no, no. Stop me while I started, homie, whoa, whoa. Now this shit settled, just go better and better. I'll always remember, yeah, yeah.
Mary Lynn Hammer, welcome back to That1 Podcast. I had to bring you back because first we talked about a totally different topic on the first episode, and I wanted to bring you back in to talk about less health things and more focus on the student loan crisis and what you're doing around that and what your philosophy is on it. And, you know, I have questions about it as well, and I think the audience does too, so it'd be a good conversation to have. So welcome back. So let me ask you this on that. With those 10, are they politically biased people, or do you try to keep that out of it, or how does that work?
They can be, and that's actually the reason why we didn't get consensus. The person that withheld consensus, it was only one person. She said she was good with the language that we had negotiated, and then she asked to put something in there to exempt sanctuary cities.
Oh, okay, I get it.
From all of the laws and regulations. It's like, well, we can't do that. First of all, we don't have the authority to do that. And second of all, why would you tell somebody it's okay to break the law?
Right.
So the language was primarily focused on that if the companies who are approved, they're called eligible qualified employers, and they're approved to offer this as an employee benefit. So it's places like medical, like hospitals and medical practices and that type of thing, government buildings or government people, organizations, like firefighters and teachers.
So to be clear, this is to forgive student loan debt for those service-oriented people. Right. Okay, so that makes sense. And then the money would come from the government, the taxpayer.
Yes.
Okay.
And
I just want to make sure we're clear on that.
So the borrower has to make 120 voluntary on-time payments, and then they also have to work for an employer for 120 months. So those are the two qualifiers.
Which is 10 years.
It's a 10-year program.
Retroactive?
And well, the program's been in existence for many years, and so this is just tweaking the language. It's been rewritten something like 9 times since it was originally written. Right. And so this was around making sure that the NGOs that are approved for this program are not breaking the laws. So
gotcha.
If the employer breaks the laws, the employer loses eligibility, and they can no longer offer this to their employees. So the original intent of it was to recognize the public service, and that, especially teachers and medical personnel, where they're not necessarily making enough money to pay off this debt in a reasonable amount of time, but the jobs are highly needed.
Yep.
So
makes
this
sense.
is kind of the reward for those people. And also in a lot of areas, these are where they have a shortage of workers. So it's also getting people into those fields where we desperately need them, like medical people. There's a shortage of medical people all over the country.
Yeah. So when I'm thinking about this, with the 120 payments, what percentage of the debt is, on average, because I know it can vary, what percentage of the debt was looked at as being taken care of after that?
It really depends on the position. The doctors and attorneys that are doing pro bono work or those type of things are going to be making more money than, say, somebody who's a social worker, which I actually personally think is a shame, because social workers are so important to getting people back on track, and they work so hard and they make hardly anything. But they can also qualify for the income-driven repayment programs, which gets their payments as low as possible. And then, it pushes the balances out 20 to 25 years. So in those cases, depending on how much their payment is, it could be up to half.
Gotcha. Well, here's the thing with this. The whole problem that I saw, obviously I see the issue with this, the student loan debt crisis, I'll call it. But then it's like, well, some people paid their debts and some people are still paying their debts. And so how do you justify wiping people's debts clear? And then now this service-oriented program does it for those that qualify, and it makes sense. There's some kind of qualification there. I mean, I guess the other thing I wanted to know is, are the 10 members public? Like, is it public knowledge who the 10 members are?
It's all different. It is posted on the department's website, and they come from different groups. So this is actually written in law. It began in 1998 after the higher education reauthorization in that year. And that was the first year that there was negotiators. I've been doing this a long time. I've been doing this longer than that, just to give you an idea. And it is so that people can know how to implement these laws. But the language in the law that requires negotiator rulemaking is that parties who will be affected by its content are the people who can have representation at the table.
Gotcha.
So I was representing the proprietary school industry.
Okay.
But you want to weigh in, like, my heart's always been with the students. So, I always feel like if you're doing the right thing for the students, then the schools will benefit.
Yeah.
And that's my personal philosophy.
What is the benefit of the lady that, I'm assuming it's a lady, I think you mentioned it was lady, but that exempting sanctuary cities from what specifically?
From all of the regulatory criteria for this program and being held accountable for following the laws.
The businesses,
and they're existing laws. They're laws but the
businesses, right? The businesses in sanctuary cities.
Mm-hmm.
So they would, if they were exempt, which is against the law, but if they were exempt, they wouldn't have to follow the regulations to be able to forgive the debts or have those employees of those meet the requirements.
Yeah. For example, if a nonprofit is caught and prosecuted, because that was part of the language, that they were actually prosecuted for hiding illegal aliens or for hiding a terrorist, anything like that, which are existing laws, that they would no longer be an eligible employer. Got
it. And so are the negotiators paid to go a certain way? Are they how are they influenced?
They're not. We got a discount on our hotel rooms.
But this lady, for example, this has got to be a personal belief of hers. Then, if she's not influenced externally, she's just okay.
We didn't discuss sanctuary cities. It's not even defined in law. Sanctuary city, that term is not even defined in law. So, the Department of Education is not the entity to do that. Like, that was not part of our negotiations at all, and it came up at the last minute. And, we don't have the authority to do so. And we are supposed to stick with the subject that we're negotiating. You can't say we're here for public service loan forgiveness and then, take on the whole world in there.
So if you have a person like that and you need consensus, is there a process where they can disqualify themselves based on irrationality. I don't know if that's a word.
Well, and she actually said she would abstain from the vote because she said she didn't have a problem with the language. And then it took her a few minutes to come back in the room before we took the vote, and she sat down and dissented when she had told us she was going to abstain.
Jeez.
So everybody was kind of like, what just happened? You know, it was very frustrating because we worked so hard. And, you know, we were told before the vote that if we didn't get consensus, that a lot of the things we negotiated were going to go away. And that's a shame because we
So
worked
what
really
happened?
hard.
What happens now, though, in that situation?
So now the Department of Education can write what it wants. There's pieces that we negotiated that I believe are going to stay in there. We had negotiated a way for the employer to have an approved correction plan where they could maintain their eligibility. They would be audited to make sure that they would follow that plan, but it gave them an option to say, we're not going to break this law anymore, and we're going to stick to this plan. So, and any school in any city can do that.
Gotcha.
So it's just, you know, not getting involved in some of the, you know, like the trespassing and breaking windows and things like that. You know, those are not things that you want to have getting, you know, special treatment in these programs.
Yeah.
You know, because if it's just a bad trend to start. You know, if you're breaking one law, then it's easy to break another one. And what the heck? Just throw all the towels in. And, you know, it could just become this big cluster, and it doesn't matter where the entity is involved, or where they're located. It's anywhere in the United States.
So do you feel like you wasted your time?
No, because the department really heard us. They came further than I've ever seen them come before. I believe that the things like the corrective action plan with no interruption for the borrowers, that's a good thing. I think that'll stay in there. We had to negotiate language around organizations where they have one EIN number, but different departments, like a lot of these, like the city of Boston was the example we were using, where they have one EIN number, but within that they've got the Department of Education, the fire department, the police department, you know, all these different departments. And so we had to come up with a way to identify if one department within the organization loses eligibility, that the rest can still participate. So
Right.
that language will stay in there.
Very important. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, that's okay. And then notifications to the borrowers, like that they're going to be notified by the secretary if she has them in their database, and she'll give them notice, or whoever's in the position. I'm saying she because it's she right now, but they'll get notified if their employer is under investigation. So
Gotcha.
that gives the borrower a chance to like file the documents they need to have their employment dates on record and start making decisions of whether they want to stay with that organization or move to a different one.
Gotcha.
So
And what is your confidence level with the current secretary, Linda McMahon, and her team, based on what you know?
She has some really great people on the team. Some of them I've known for many years. And so I know how they operate and what's behind them. There's just so much all at one time. It's a volume issue for how do we get all this done and how do we prioritize. So the next thing that we'll be working on as part of the big beautiful bill is in the repayment schedules that are offered to the borrowers. So right now, depending on when they took the loans out, there's numerous different income-driven repayment programs. There's, all these different options, and so we're going to simplify that and make it either a standard repayment or income-driven, where everybody's in the same program, and those are the two different options. So
Gotcha.
That's the next thing we have to negotiate because it's changing some of the terms of what's happening.
So when you go to Washington, where do you go? The Capitol, or where did you meet?
At the Department of Education.
Oh, at the Department of Education. Okay, gotcha. And the crisis of this, can you kind of speak to what the problem is with this whole thing in general, so people have a real clear understanding?
Basically, there was 5 years of no payments on the student loans, which I think
What percentage?
is a tragedy. All of them.
Everybody just stopped paying because they're like,
March 14th, 2020, the payments were put on hold for a 6-month period of time. And that was an election year. It got extended by 3 months into January. So it started in March, went to October the first time, then it got extended to January. But then it just kept going with this promise of student loan forgiveness. And so a lot of people bought into that they were going to get their loans fully or a lot of them forgiven. That was never legal. The department does not have the authority to do that. And so there was all kinds of legal cases going on, but the bottom line is that they knew the whole time it was not legal and kept extending it until after the election. And so now, it appears that Trump is the one that's putting the kibosh on all these things and making people pay and everything, but it has nothing to do with Trump. They had to pay anyway.
Yeah, it was never legal.
Yeah. So,
and you think that was planned to make
yes,
people look bad? Yeah, I do too.
Yeah,
I do too.
And I was telling them for the last few years, I said, when you've gone too long, the highest rate of default is on the people who never make the first payment.
Yep, I was in a mortgage business. It was the same way. We had first payment default. We'd have to pay every month, every dollar that we made as a mortgage company back to the person that bought the loan.
Yeah, it's your highest risk.
Yep. The service release premium, they called it. If they didn't make the first payment default. And I think it was like the first 3 payments or 6 payments. I can't remember. That was the issue because they knew that those didn't perform. So what is the result? What is the effect of this whole thing with people not paying for the last 4 or 5 years, whatever it is?
Well, I told the department that it'll be a 70 or 80% delinquent rate when we come out of this. And I was telling people up on the Hill, and they thought I was being dramatic. And first month out of the gate, it was 70% delinquent rate.
So they're back on now.
37 years.
They're back on now. When did they get turned back on?
They're back in repayment now. Most of them were extended with no payment until the springtime.
Okay.
Some were going until September, but then the department backed it up to June 30th. So within that portfolio, we have over 5 million people that are already in default. 12.8% of the portfolio. We've got another 5 million that are going to go into default any day now. And default is when they become 271 days past due as technical default. So we have late stage delinquencies, another 5 million. So that's another 10%. Then we have about 38% of the portfolio that's delinquent.
So wow.
The White House is calling it a waterfall of defaults, and they are now anticipating that we may have default rates as high as 70%.
And was that delay in payment for people that were going to school during that time and took or like graduated?
Every borrower.
Every single one. Like, let's say they took on a loan and they came out 2 years into that. They still didn't have to make their first payments.
Right.
Okay.
They're just making them now.
Okay, gotcha.
And a lot of people are not making them. People find other ways to spend their money.
Of course.
But it was the dumbest thing that could have ever been done. And, for the borrowers that we didn't keep all of our clients during that time, but we had some that stayed with us, and we were calling the borrowers, and we got about 22% of them to make principal reduction payments. Because the thing is that if they had just stopped charging interest and had people make a regular payment during that time where there's no interest charged, about half of the borrowers in this country would have paid their loan off.
Wow. Well, what's the average interest rate on those?
It depends on when the loan was taken out. So
Yeah, but I
some of
mean,
them are fixed
like,
rates, but most of them are between 6 and 8% for the
okay,
students.
okay.
The plus loans can be higher. It can go up
And
to
some parents,
12%.
right? Some parents
Yeah,
took out loans for their kids too, so it's the parents
yeah.
as well. But
So
you know what?
those can go up to 12.
I bet the parents are more likely to pay than the student.
Typically, they are.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of qualification other than your income. So the
Yep.
lowest income people get the highest amount of benefits.
Yeah.
And they're also the least financially literate.
Yeah.
So, you take people out of welfare backgrounds where everybody in their families on welfare and nobody's ever had a checking account, and you hand them thousands and thousands of dollars, and that's like the people who win the lottery and then they're in bankruptcy a year later.
Yeah. Or
They
COVID
have to be
checks.
taught.
People
Yeah.
with COVID checks, all of a sudden, I go to Miami a lot, and I go to this condo that was on the water in Hallandale, and it was a nice place. And then they gave the COVID checks out, and the place turned into basically the strip clubs shut down during COVID. So whoever goes to strip clubs and the workers got these checks, and then they went to this condo building and started having parties in this condo building, and guns, like people were getting shot and everything. That just ruined the place. And because they just got that money, and it was like, okay, this money's used now for the flesh, the desires of the flesh, we'll call it.
Yep. Well,
And
I don't know if I ever told you this. I moved to North Florida from Miami Beach
did you?
3 years ago. Yeah, I was just like, this is getting a little crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was like, I don't want to come here anymore. I mean, it's just not what I came here for in the first place. And, so anyway, so let me ask you this. Why the passion for this for you? I understand the problem and everybody should be concerned with it, but why are you so passionate about it?
Well, I grew up in an abusive home, and it was really bad. I grew up in Montana. And early on, I realized that education was my ticket to freedom. And so when I was in the 7th grade, this other boy and I became the school's experimental project for advanced classes. So we were given a different set of books and stuck in the back corner of the classroom without a teacher. Everybody else got the teacher, and we were kind of on our own. So that was really the experimental stages of like the AP classes that you see in the schools now.
Yeah.
And so, and then the following year we had a whole class of us, like the study bugs, bookworms. We had all kinds of nicknames the rest of the school gave us. And I graduated from high school early and went to college, and I just wanted to have my freedom. And I went to a for-profit school, and that changed my life because it was the first time that somebody said, I believe in you. And they had me go for a scholarship.
Yeah.
And nobody had ever told me that before. And, that background drove so many things in my life. Like I became a world-class skier because I would go up on the mountain and take my anger out on the mountain. And so I was like a crazy person. I didn't even realize until one day a coach saw me skiing, and I skied with the guys because, they were more. I had a wild hair. He said, "Why aren't you on my team?" And I'd never even thought about it. It's like I said, I didn't have any support at home, so I didn't really do any of those kind of things. And so I started skiing for them, and ended up I did a lot of skiing with the Warren Miller guys. I was usually the only girl, but so that drove that part of my life, and it also drove this belief that education can make people's dreams come true. And when I was first working in the field, I was the first default manager in the country, and I was hired in January of 1988. And I thought, what is this? Because I came out of a lending background, and I thought, what's a default manager? And they said, oh, the government's making student loan defaults an issue, so here's a computer in an office, just do something. So there's no precedent for it. So I made it all up, and first thing I found is some corruption in the lending industry, and I ended up turning evidence over to Congress and the Department of Education and testifying. And my best friend and I were going to start a men's wardrobing service in Scottsdale, Arizona, and we had our investor, our logo, our business plan, everything ready to go. And I took some students to Washington with me, and they were telling their stories about what they gave up in order to get their education. And I mean, we're sitting in congressional offices crying, right? It just kind of brought me back to where I started. And one of the girls had a 2-year-old daughter. When she got her student loan money, they considered it income and took away all of her benefits. And so she had to give up her daughter for a year to finish her education.
Jeez.
And on the way back to Arizona, we stopped and picked her daughter up. She was 3 years old. And I prayed about it, and I had to call my best friend, and I said, I think I have a calling. And it was one of the hardest conversations I've ever had. And I said, I prayed about it. And she said, well, if that was an answer to a prayer, you've got to follow it. And she was very supportive, even though disappointed.
Right.
And so it just kind of launched this fight for making sure that the schools and the borrowers could continue their education and that they weren't being discriminated against, because education is part of domestic discretionary. So that means that every few years they have to reauthorize the act, which was originally written during the Civil Rights Movement, so that low-income people could get an education. They're also the highest risk of default.
Mm-hmm.
So when they start doing budget cuts, a lot of times they'll write language saying, well, if we just eliminate these schools that, the for-profit schools that cater to the at-risk students just as much as the community colleges, and they do a better job of it. The proprietary sector has the highest graduation rates of any college, including traditional colleges. And they wanted to eliminate those schools from the program, which would have severely hurt these at-risk kids. And so then I started going, no, you're not.
Yeah.
Well,
it's a conflict of interest, because the business side of things, you want to lend to those that can pay back.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so it's a business decision, but it doesn't help when it's a social, I'm slipping the word here. So a social initiative, and so it gets complicated. Well, look, we're up against the clock. I want 60 seconds. What's the perfect solution? Result of the perfect solution. You may not know the perfect solution, but what's the result look like of the perfect solution?
Well, my greatest hope is that when we negotiate the repayment schedules that we'll be putting on the table, is that we can find a combination of making the payments affordable at the same time they're paying down the loans. So a lot of the crisis has been that they've been given interest only or negative amortization payments, and they never pay it off. Mm-hmm. So, and that's a terrible emotional drain on people, is knowing that they have this debt that never goes away. So that's my greatest hope, is that when we come up with these new repayment schedules that are part of the new bill, that we can come to a place where they're reasonable and pays the loan off.
So with AI now, isn't there a way to use AI for an optimal solution?
I'm probably not the right person to ask that question of.
I use AI a lot. I use AI a lot, and you don't have to be technical. It's like putting, the right negotiator in a room with you and talking to that person, and you just have a conversation with it, and it'll kick back optimal solutions. And then you can refine it. You can refine it, So I don't know why people wouldn't be using, not the person you particularly, but like your team or whatever, and say, hey, we need to use this for the optimal solution, because you can converse with it. It has all the data and all the different algorithms and things that could spit out the optimal solution. Because it's never going to, every solution, the best solution is optimal, is not going to cure everything. It just can't. It's impossible to cure everything. You just got to find the optimal. I keep saying that on purpose, because it's like the best of the best, Yeah. Where can people go deeper and learn more about what you're doing, Mary Lynn?
Well, for the schools, we have championsolutions.net, and that's where we offer full service solutions because the schools have a vested interest in the outcome of the loans, and how the borrowers pay them. And then for individual borrowers, we have championempowerment.com, where we have financial literacy courses. It's not just about student loans, about all kinds of things and life skills, and we do personal development over there. I'm doing a kids camp in a couple of weeks. I'm super
Oh, that's
excited
awesome.
about it at the farm up in Florida. So those are the two ways that you can get a hold of us. And if you need help with your student loans, we would love to help you.
Amazing. Thank you for popping on here again with me. I appreciate your
bet.
time. And I want to be a part of this mission, get this word out. So, folks, that's Mary Lynn Hammer. I appreciate all of you being here. Keep coming back. Make sure you subscribe on your favorite podcast platform, or subscribe or follow, whatever the button is at the top of your platform there. And keep coming back. And until next time, it's your boy C-Roc signing off on That1 Podcast with Mary Lynn Hammer. Be that one.